Hey there everybody, this is Danny Zacharias. I assume that you know me as you're watching this video and I'm posting it to my social media channels or my website. Anyway, Logos 9 has come out today, and like I've done in the past, when a new version comes out, I like to have a little review. And I'm also a Logos affiliate now, which means that I sometimes can give a little bit of discounts out, and sometimes I get a little bit of promo material back. So just a heads up on that. If you do click on the link below and decide to upgrade, I get a bit of a thank you, and so I thank you in advance for that. Even if you don't want to do that, I still want to review because I love Logos. I'm a Logos geek, I fully admit it. And so whenever new versions come out, I'm always excited to share. So I want to highlight some of the big changes that came in Logos 9 that will be helpful to you and hopefully will spark your interest in things that you'd like to see. So first things first, as you see, I have Logos open full screen here. One of the big requests that came to Logos was the ability to have dark mode. So you can now do a dark mode in Logos. I've never really cared that much. I prefer the light mode, but you can, right from the little button, choose dark mode and reset, and you'll be in dark mode. And so for those who love dark mode, and there are many of you out there, you'll be happy to see that. One thing that I like to see, because I'm a professor and because I teach New Testament and because I use Logos sometimes in the classroom, I don't always want to have my full Logos running because I'd rather it look more like what the students have, and we just require them to have academic basic, and then they add on some parts. So it becomes difficult sometimes in showing Logos when they see all these other things because I have a full package. And so I was really happy to see that they had this little way to have multiple users essentially. So this is my more limited account, where it's just the basic one that's a lot more similar to what my entry students will have. Right now I'm obviously in my full version, but that was really helpful to have as well. Okay, so let's talk about some of the big features, and I hope to do even more more detailed posts on some of these things. So the first thing I want to do is point out and show to you and recommend therefore Logos 9 for some of the focus that they've placed on the role of the pastors. So most Logos users are in ministry or going into ministry, and Logos always has you in mind. And last version 8, they introduced the sermon editor. Ever since that came out, whenever I do preach, I started using the sermon editor. I love it. You can create your slides right while you're doing your sermon. It gives you how long you're approximately going to be. You can keep track of where you did it. So the sermon editor, which is available in the tools menu, clear that, you'll see here sermon, it's been changed to sermon builder, and it's all the same goodness but with some additions made to it. So if you don't know or haven't done the sermon editor before, you have it set like this. You see the table or the tabs above, so you just begin typing your sermon. As you create titles, it creates the slide equivalent, and you can then highlight certain portions as questions or to be part of a handout if you do those types of things. And so Sermon Editor is awesome. They've added this info on the side here where you can start making just kind of metadata information on your sermon info. Now that's going to be significant for another component. But before I get there, I do want to highlight this great little feature that they've added, and that is the ability to essentially have a notebook associated with each sermon if you want, or you can just have a notebook perhaps related to a topic or a book study. So let's say you're preaching through the Gospel of Luke, you can have a sermon notebook that is just on Luke and then grab that. So what's nice about this now is that you can not only make notes in your sermon notebook, but you can very easily grab things from the sermon notebook and throw them into the actual sermon. So yet another great feature. What they've also done, and this is true both with a laptop, so you may be someone who preaches from a laptop, you may also be someone who uses the Logos app on something like an iPad. And so now you can go right from the sermon manuscript, as it were, in Logos, right to the preaching mode, where it will open. If I clicked on this, it would open a web browser. And you see here, obviously I don't have anything typed out yet, but it would show you it in this browser. You can have that timer going now, so you see your time slowly ticking down. So that's an awesome feature. You have that in the iPad mode as well. So once you open a sermon document that you've created on your iPad, it is not an editable document. It's just a document that you scroll through. So again, when I preach, I just preach from my iPad. And if you ever see me preaching from my iPad, I'm actually looking at my sermon document built in Logos in the sermon format in the app, and all I do is scroll through. Really great. So part of the reason why you have this sermon info section is because of a new feature in the tools, once again, called the Sermon Manager. This is especially for those of you, and I'm not one of you, I recognize that, but I know because I have students and friends and mentors who are pastors, and the sermon is always coming. It's every Sunday, it's coming to you. And so this Sermon Manager is built really for you to think through your whole year coming up and be able to see, what have I preached on? What was my topic on? And that's related to how you've given information to the sermon. What was it, part of a series? And so again, you can add that to each sermon. What passages did I preach from? So, imagine you do this, and over 2 or 3 years, all of a sudden you see, I've been preaching a lot from Paul, haven't preached a lot from the Gospels lately, or I've been preaching too much from the Psalms and not enough from the Proverbs, whatever it might be. So this is a good way to kind of just continually see the overall flow of your sermons. And you can also see it in this cool radial calendar. Again, not much here because I've only preached every so often. I'm teaching more. But you can kind of get a whole view of your year. So again, a very cool feature, just being able to manage your sermons, because you are creating content all the time when you are a preacher as well. So that's one component of this new Logos 9 is beefing up the sermon editor even further, and then adding this new sermon manager. Really cool stuff. Another feature that is new is what's called the counseling guide. Oh, I'm in the tools. I need to go to the guides here. So in the guides here, you see counseling guide. So the counseling guide, I tell pastors this a lot. Increasingly, pastors need a wide skill set, a wider and wider skill set. Not only do you need to be able to preach, but you need to be able to sit one-on-one with people. You need to manage teams. Increasingly, you need to know AV, all this crazy stuff, right? So lots on your plate. And again, Logos is thinking of pastors, and I so appreciate that. Now, obviously, a counseling guide can't do the counseling for you. Hopefully, you have educated yourself on that and continue to do so in order to be a good listener and a good hearer, not to be a professional counselor necessarily. You can't, you're not necessarily doing that, but what do you do when you come up upon a particular issue? So you see here, I typed in before anxiety, so I click on that, and it's going to fill up. It's going to give you a definition, a summary. It will point you to a quick guide reference that it has there, related counseling topics you can read about, related passages that may be sources of encouragement as you're meeting with people, and then any other books related to the topic that you may have in your library. Depending on what the issue is, sometimes it'll also provide you with questions for which that you can bring to a discussion as you're talking with people. So again, this isn't a full counseling course by any stretch of the imagination, so don't think that it is. It's just attempting to be an aid for you to get your mind around a topic so that you can be a good listener, so that you can, if you have the opportunity to speak into a situation, so that you for instance, know what passages may speak to the issue, what related counseling topics there might be, because so often mental health and counseling issues are interrelated with many other issues. So it's, again, this counseling guide is just an attempt to help you and equip you towards those important conversations that you'll have with friends and parishioners. So that's the counseling guide. So I want to show you two more things. Excuse me. 2 years ago now, I think, when Logos 8 came out, I kind of, as I looked at the new features of Logos, in my opinion, I kind of summed up this new edition, this new version of Logos 8 as really being focused on making Logos a place to come and learn. I really felt that was quite a theme that was going on in some of the additions to Logos. If I had to choose a theme of what I think Logos has been trying to do, especially on the academic side, because I'm an academic professor, and so that's what I tend to lean towards in Logos. So if I had to look at Logos 9 and say what is a theme that I see going on here, I think the theme perhaps would be something like increased organization. And not increased organization so that the shelves look good, as it were, but increased organization in order to aim towards helpfulness for the user. Because, as we all know, if you do a Google search, well, Google brings back 10,000 hits. It potentially, does it by rankings, number of hits that the websites had, etc. But it's still so much. How do you wade through it? And Logos is becoming this little world with so much information, so many sources. Logos creating its own amazing content from other publishers that are being brought in. And so it's increasingly just getting more and more, and it's great to have at our fingertips, but where do you start? And so I think really one of the themes that I see, perhaps academically the main theme that I see in Logos 9, is this increased organization towards efficiency of sources to make sure that you get the best use you can out of what you have in the library. And a prime example is the Factbook. So the Factbook has had an overhaul. You see it has a new icon, a new pretty icon, but that's not all. First off, the Factbook is a lot easier to access. So I'm going to open the Lexham English Bible on the side here, and you see you have a Factbook icon here. And if I click on that, it will start underlining a whole bunch of things with a blue dotted underline. And if you click on any of those, so if I click on Silvanus here, who opens Silas, which is the equivalent person, and you see it's opened him up in the Factbook. So it's much easier to go from your Bible text to the Factbook to find the relevant information you have. Now, as you see here in the Factbook, we have more sections than we had before. And one other video from Logos that I saw throughout the estimation, and I think it's probably right given what I've seen so far, that the Factbook seems to have 10 times the amount of connectivity that it had before. In other words, it's grabbing even more content. That's one thing. So it's grabbing even more content. But, and this is the big thing for me, why I was talking about organization as being one of the central principles of version 9, is that it's organizing it better than it had before as well. So not only is it grabbing more content, but it's organizing it more efficiently as well for us. So we have a lot more tabs here and organized a lot better. So obviously we're looking at one guy. He's not mentioned a ton, and so he's not here quite as often. But I'll show you another example in a second. So the Factbook is doing many things. It is grabbing a lot of different stuff, even to the point that you can get down to words. So not only people, places, and things, and that's quite often how the Factbook has been, people, places, and things, but you can now even look up words in the Factbook, like Greek and Hebrew words. And so it's gotten even more robust in that sense. It's looking at more, and it's starting to organize it better. So the Factbook is quickly becoming the place you go to ask Logos a question about something. And you could, of course, do that in the search, but the search was exhaustive. Kind of, again, think Google, just giving you all of the information. And that's, of course, great because it's what you've purchased. It's in your Logos world. But now the Factbook is taking that search, and now it's organizing it for you. So again, that principle of organization that I think is really key in Logos 9. So one place that I see that as well, which is why I love this new update, is we see it in an example like in the passage guide. So the passage guide here, I'll pop open. Let me just choose this here for the sake of the example here. So the passage guide is always a great place to go when you're looking at a particular pericope within your biblical text, and it grabs, again, all of your content and brings it into this organized place. But here's an example of where I see, again, that increased emphasis on the organization of the myriad of data that you have. So you see I have a whole bunch of commentaries here within the commentary section. Let me just increase that so you can see that a little better. So you have this, all these commentaries. You can click and you could see even more if you wanted to. But notice here how now you have these tabs along the side where you can see where are these coming from, what series are they in. So it will organize it according to series. You can organize it according to author and see if you have one author, perhaps writing it in multiple series. You can look at the denomination of the authors that are being written. Sometimes it's not available or not known. But you can then, if you want to focus, perhaps you want to say, well, what is the Anglican perspective on this? What is the Baptist perspective on this? What's the Pentecostal perspective on this? You can go into the commentaries and then delineate it by denomination. What type of commentary is it? Because some you have which are exegetical. Those tend to be more technical. When we say exegetical, it's kind of looking at the interpretation, what it meant for the original hearers, as opposed to theological, which may be asking those broader questions of how it fits into theological systems. Application focused on this side, what does the text mean for us as it intersects with our lives today. Expositional, so these tend to be coming from preachers and from within preaching, and all of these are very good different types, but they are different, and so it's good to be able to quickly see rather than you having to open up those 8 commentaries to figure out which one is which. Logos is doing that for you. And then, of course, Era will help you see where they sit, right? Do you want to specifically say, what did the early church or some of the earliest writings in the church say about this? Well, then go to those particular areas. What did the contemporary voices saying on the text? You go to contemporary. So again, this is one of those places where I see organization as a factor. So one last example I want to show you where I think that this is showing this example of organization is from, again, the myriad of data that you have. As I've said before, Logos for some years has really begun to create its own excellent content. And Logos 8, I really saw this as a feature, and Logos 7 as well, that Logos and Lexham Press was really starting to create just this excellent material that continues to be here. So you have things that came out but have been improved, like particular media, like the before and after place sites. Let me find that quickly. So you have things like that, these biblical sites, right? So you see all of the variety of places. Well, there was a lot less pictures here in version 8 than there is now in version 9. So they've the awesome things that came out in 7 and 8 have continued to get better, where you can see, so if I go to Herod's Palace, that's Caesarea Maritima, that's what it looks like today. And as you pull it over, you can see a reconstruction of what it likely looked like back then. So this is just such a cool thing to be able to see. And again, they've improved these things even further within Logos 9. But you also have new creations, new sources, as it were, that have derived from within the Logos web itself. So if you were to type in Lexham Lexicon, you will see that there are some new items called Lexham Research Lexicons, which my friend Rick Brannon has been working on. And so if I were to open up Lexham Research Lexicon of the Greek New Testament, for instance, you will see that Lexham, or Logos 9, again, it depends on your base package, now has another lexicon that is there for you that is looking at its existing data, and it's bringing it together into one great spot. And so I just clicked on Angelia here, but you can see as I scroll through here, so Angelo, or whatever it might be, you see it brings obviously the word here, it gives you a gloss, it shows your Hebrew and Aramaic equivalents. You can see where it sits in the Lexham Theological Word Book in terms of larger senses or theological meanings. And then you have a breakdown of the usages. So you get two main usages and examples there, and then gives you related topics. So this is, and then as you go down there, Septuagint references of the word, alternate corpus references, so you can see where it's used in Philo, Josephus, the Apostolic Fathers. And then if you want to read more about the word usage, you see commentary and journal articles being gathered in. Now, you may not have these items within your library necessarily. If you do, you can click and it'll open up. If you don't and you really want it, you can purchase it in Logos, or you can go to a local library, etc., and find those things. But we're now getting here information that often you can only get from the larger lexicons, and it's being gathered in not only from existing web sources, but there's also brilliant people like Rick Brannon working on things like this for stuff like commentary and journal articles to read more in depth than even a lexicon or that you would have otherwise. So things like this Lexham Research Lexicon, again, depending on what base package you might have, is now included in Logos 9, and it's yet another one of those great sources unique to Logos. And again, it's one of those things where I see the organization of data now being a big theme in version 9 to make all of what you have, this huge web within Logos, like the internet. They're taming Logos now, because Logos is so big with so much great information. They're trying to make it more and more organized and more accessible for you as the user. So there is my brief and rambling review of Logos 9. Like I said, I hope to do more of these in the future, just to highlight a couple of the new items and new features of Logos 9, so stay tuned for that as time allows. But I hope that this gave you a good taste of Logos 9 and what some of the great new features are. And again, if you're interested in upgrading your base package, you can see my affiliate link below. If you don't feel like doing that, no problem, no hard feelings. I just want you to get out there and make good use of Logos to preach the word well, do some good study, and share with others. All right, guys, take care. Bye.